Ozark Trail, I have quite a few videos on this FS.2 Solemn, including the one I'll be releasing tomorrow. If I get it edited, I'm going to be talking about the dropper post. Very important, what will and what will not work and why. But today, I want to talk about my other two wheels, and not bicycle wheels, scooter wheels from my genuine Stella. And I'm about to get rid of this thing. I just got it a couple of months ago, but this thing, well, let's talk about this. Genuine Stella. This is my Stella, my genuine scooter company, Stella Scooter 2008 model, and this is my second one. I owned a 2009 Stella previously, and it was the nostalgia for that scooter that led me to this one, and where I learned that nostalgia is a double-edged sword. I'm a really nostalgic person, but the problem with nostalgia is you look back and typically forget some of the bad and only remember the good. So I bought this, and now I'm starting to re-experience the problems that I had with my previous Stella. First, about these, if you're not aware, if you look at this and you think, well, that looks a lot like a Vespa, well, that's because in many ways this has Vespa lineage. This is the genuine scooter company Stella, but LML is the company that made this. It's made in India, or was made in India by LML, a company that doesn't even exist anymore. And from what I've read, LML actually made Vespas for the Indian market, and then at some point they started branding them on their own as LML scooters and just kept making them, and then eventually exported them, which is how this came to be, an export variant. And I think they even got sued by Vespa because of that, and somehow won and eventually just folded. And this has some LML heritage just in the name. LML sold the Star in this model, and this is the Stella, and from what I'm told, Stella in Italian means star, so that's kind of cool. A little carryback there. But this, in the Vespa world, would be a P series, or a Vespa PX is what this is really close to because of the disc brake. But this has some improvements over an actual Vespa P series. Number one, I've read that the steel on these is slightly thicker than it is on a Vespa. And also the engine that's hiding under this cowl has a reed block, so a more modern, cool reed induction system, giving a little more power, some more responsiveness. And that makes the LML Star, or this genuine scooter company Stella, kind of a cool idea. Vintage looks, nice styling, and by vintage, you know, we're talking 80s look here. Though I will put a picture here side by side. This is a 1978 Vespa P125 on the right, and then my 2009 Stella, the old one that I had, right beside it, and you can see they look practically identical aside from the disc brake on the Stella. One thing about Vespas, they always have a monocoque steel frame, so big one-part frame, and back in the day that was a big deal because it was lightweight for back in the 40s or 50s when they started making Vespas, to have a one-piece frame. So on this bike, this is steel, glove box is steel, all of this is steel, the cowl's steel. What's plastic is the headset cover and this horn cast. And I think, yeah, like the little trim piece, well, that might even be, no, that's plastic, little trim pieces. But the main parts of this scooter, including this fender beading here, are either steel or aluminum. So a very beefy, hefty scooter. Okay, so now to the features. I'm going to go over this top to bottom like I do with the bike. I'm going to start up top here at the handlebars, where on a bike you have just grips. On this, you have a throttle, because this is essentially a motorcycle. So you've got a right hand throttle. This is a brake, the front brake that works, that front disc brake. This is the master cylinder reservoir, which, as I mentioned, I've already replaced. Front and center, the instrument cluster. It's all in one, so you have a speedo, light indicators, turn signal indicators, neutral switch indicators, because this does have a neutral because it's a 4-speed, and then a brake light indicator. So, and down here's the brake. Front brake here, but rear brake here, down on the floorboard. Look at that. Little floorboard brake. Either one's going to illuminate this stoplight. And there's the odometer, 2048 as of today, and that's probably what's going to be sold with. I might get one more ride in on it before I sell it. But it also has the gas gauge here, the float, You'll see when we get to under the seat. That's the instrument cluster, and the right side on the left side of the bars, this is not a brake, this is the clutch. So squeeze this in and twist, and there are 4 speeds. That makes this a 4-speed manual transmission, which is super cool. Left side switching, the horn button, and bright and dim lights. And unlike a bicycle, this being a motorcycle class ridden on the road, you need mirrors. And this has 2 large ones. What I like about these is they sit on out there. Don't have any shoulder trying to see around yourself problems with these. Very good, long, nice mirrors. A lot of people buy aftermarket replacements because, you know, these are getting older, so they'll get rusty and ate up. And those are sometimes shorter and don't work as well. But this has the nice factory long mirrors. And I really, really like that. And this headlight really lights up the road well. Moving down to the main body, as I mentioned, it's, I don't know if they say it monocoque. It's, I'll put it on your screen how it's spelled. This big leg shield, and that's one good thing. And kind of a Vespa, as far as I understand it, Vespa invented this. The leg shield, a big large leg shield, and what that does is protects you not only from wind, rain. So in a suit, you know, in Italy, think about Italy and the style consciousness from Italy back in the 50s. You could wear a suit on this and you're protected from mud, from splashing. These cowls help protect, keep engine noise at bay, keep engine heat away from you, any blowback from the engines away from you. A very, very good design. And bolted onto this frame is a steel glove box. It's pretty roomy. Nice big roomy glove box in here. And let's go back to the front. Now this is a horn cast. It's plastic, as I mentioned. You can see this one's already cracked. I have a replacement. I was going to get it painted and put on, but I'm not even going to worry with it now. But this horn cast behind this, all the wiring. And Stellas have a lot of extra stuff over a Vespa P series, so it's more to kind of, that's why they break so easy. There's so much pressure here. There's a horn behind this, so a horn grill, metal fender. Someone's added this. This was an aftermarket. I think it looks cool. It's pretty nice. From the factory, there were reflectors on both sides. You can see that one has fallen off, and they've even tried to glue one. It was very common for these to go. I think on my old original one that I bought in 2009, within about a year, they'd started falling off on it. So moving down, now this is a Vespa thing. If that looks like an aircraft suspension, that's because it's designer inspired after one. Piaggio, the company that makes Vespa, actually did aircraft, so you can kind of see the history here. But the cool thing, it's kind of like a reverse Cannondale. You have the lefty on a Cannondale, we have a righty here on any vintage Vespa. How about that? Isn't that cool? And that means you can get to the wheels to take them off, not just at the front, but at the back. You can take the wheels off and do tire changes without having to undo anything else on the scooter. Here's the disc brake, part of what made the Stella cool, bringing a modern disc brake here. But of course, Vespa eventually, I think possibly in response to this, came out with the PX that also had a front disc brake. Here's a braided steel brake line. Again, that leg shield. Protection and strength because it's part of the body. On the floorboard, there is a center channel because of the way this is made, all one piece. You know, curves are more support, and this brings support and rigidity to the frame. This is just a padded cover. And if you wondered what this is a cylinder head temp gauge that my buddy loaned to me. I used to have one on my old Stella once I modified the engine. It senses the temperature at the cylinder head, so you know if a soft seas is coming or a seas, which is another thing on these old two-strokes. You're told to ride with 2 fingers ready on the clutch, because as you're rolling down the highway at 60 miles per hour or more, the engine could lock up, because two-stroke can seize if things aren't just perfect. Not something I have to worry about on a modern Vespa, but on these, I do. I've already talked about the brake here. Look at these rails, these rubber rails, somewhere to put your feet, whether you want it up front, at the back, or you have a passenger. Your passenger, you have room for a passenger, and have the power to have one on the back of the bike. Well, their feet can go here, yours there, so there's plenty of room. Plenty of room, and look at this. A bag carrier, you can carry groceries, things like that. This is the fuel shut-off. You turn it off, straight up is on, and that is reserve. So you start running out of gas, you flip this over really fast, then you have about another half a gallon. Down a little further from that is the choke. You pull this out, when you want to start on a cold day. That's the manual choke, and this is what's called the sight glass. And it's full right now, but this would get an air bubble in it, so you'd start to see white. There's a little white thing in here, and that would tell you need to add oil, and you add oil under the seat. A very comfy padded seat. This one branded for Genuine Scooter Company. But I like this. Have a little retainer here if you need to slip something under it. And also it's a separating line for rear passenger and the front passenger, but a very comfortable seat. They do make them sit up a little bit higher when they're padded like this, so shorter people might have a problem with it, but it's keyed with the lock, so you can lock it out, or you open it up when you want to fill up the gas, or if you need to put oil. That sight glass goes right to here. This is the reservoir for it. Pull that off and put oil down in there, so no pre-mixing, which is very important to me because I cannot stand the thought of having to pre-mix. One of the banes of a two-stroke, an older two-stroke, you have to pre-mix. So if you're at a gas station, you have to start keeping up with the ratios. If you only use 3/4 of a gallon, not a full gallon, well, there's math involved, and I don't like math. That oil reservoir and the auto lube system make that a non-problem. Here's a look at the inside of the seat, and look at that name there. Some of the Indian heritage, and oh, that is the fuel sender for the fuel float. That's how the bike knows what to display here on the gauge. That's the seat. Let's look at the back here, just at the tail light. A nice large tail light on these illuminate very well, and that's where the tag goes. You can see, so new to me, I never even put the tag on it. And here's a look at the back. You can see the turn signals. They didn't even show them up front, but at the rear, you have nice turn signals and just the profile back here. Very Vespa Sprint, looking like if the Sprint evolved, which is exactly what happened. From the Vespa Sprint to the P-Series, the shape back there just more squared because the 80s was when these existed, or at least existed originally. But here's the front turn signals, 2 of them, 2 up front, the 2 at the rear. It's a very, very sleek, very nice setup. I'm going to open this back up because there's also little handles here. And what they do, and this is cool, twist this handle. You saw the cowl free up there. You can actually remove the cowl to get to the engine. And all the turn signal wiring is integrated into this fender. It's a really cool design. And you can see the Stella badging, this one broke off. And that was pretty common because there's a bit of a sweep to this, and this badge is flat, so you can see. Start pulling away and people hit them and snag them on things, and they'll just break off almost always right there. It's amazing that this one has made it the 16 years since it was made. And I might as well show you over here, this lever opens up too, and this cowl comes off. And normally, there's a tire sitting back there. And here it is. So let me just kind of gingerly put this in place. And it sits there just like so. So how cool is that? Underneath the left side cowl is a spare tire. So if you have a flat, you just lay the bike over on its right side. You have access to either the front or the rear tire, and you have a spare that's carried on the bike underneath the left cowl. How cool is that? And behind that tire is the starter electronics and of course the battery. Okay, so here is the engine, and this is where my problems start and where I ended off in 2009 with my other one. I think I sold it in about 2011, but this is a 150cc engine. Actually, this one is upgraded. It is a 177cc engine. There's a brand new VMC cylinder here. There's a full circle Mazzucchelli crank, or Mazzucchelli, however you want to say it, a good Italian crank in this. There's a new 2424 carb hiding under this airbox. The factory was a 2020. Here's the oil line. Goes from the oil tank right into here, and there's an auto lube mixing system that auto meters as you're giving it throttle. It'll add more or less oil to get everything mixed and working properly. And let me tell you, oh, and down here, that you can barely see it, that exhaust, that's a new SIP Road 3.0, a good exhaust. This one's probably making about 5 more horsepower than it made from the factory. Very nice sounding. I'll try to edit maybe in some sounds here. But it's a good little engine, except, and this is what ruined me on the Stella. I don't know if you can see in here, but that blue sealant there, that's under the reed block. And the reed block is part of the unique things that differentiate an LML made Vespa from a Vespa, and I'm just using the Vespa term generally here, where things go wrong for me with this bike and just really with vintage Vespas in general, because I ride, over the years I've ridden, with multiple people that have vintage Vespas, and I really do love the nostalgia of this, the history, and just the cool look, the metal construction. But these vintage Vespas, there's maintenance intensive. Not a good combo for a person like me. There's things I like to mess with, like mountain bikes. I have no problem with something breaking on a mountain bike, wrenching on it, replacing parts. But when it comes to motorized vehicles, I just want them to work and work reliably. And this does not. Well, I mean, this engine, the core part of the engine, is really good. But when it comes to these and the airbox and the carburetor, can't count the times I've seen people on vintage Vespas with airbox leaks, an air leak, which will be the death of a two-stroke engine. But this one, especially with that reed block, yeah, that thing down there, right above the blue sealant, is a reed block. And between that and where this airbox joins, it's just so easy to get an air leak, to get an oil leak, which will lead to an air leak. And I've been struggling with that. I've also been struggling with this since it's just a little older. Should be able to squeeze in on the clutch and start the bike with the electric starter. Here's the electric starter button. I didn't even talk about that. It's right below the turn signal switches, which on the right side, a little odd for us Americans, but that's the way it is on this bike. But below that, that red button, that is the push button for the electric start. Electrical problems, just one of the things with an older bike, and I've replaced a lot of this, but something's going on just periodically off and on. That doesn't work, but it does have a kickstart, so that makes it not a big deal because I can use the kickstart to start it. But it's the leaking and the constant problems of trying to manage the leaking that are making this, like I said, going into this, my nostalgia, I just remembered how cool these look, how cool they sound, how fun they are. And let me tell you, scooters in the United States, a lot of people, well, bike snobs, there's like the brooding war between crotch rocket riders and like Harley riders, stuff like that. Well, you ride around, especially in the South, on a scooter, and you'll have people say, is that your girlfriend's bike? But when they hear this one, they hear that two-stroke engine, and then they hear you shifting, people tend to like that. And I just kind of like the nostalgia of it, the history. I'm really into history. And I love classic designs and classic styles. So that appealed to me, but that nostalgia made me forget just how many nightmares I had with my previous Stella. Like when it left me stranded in the middle of Tennessee and Natchez Trace Parkway, halfway between my city and Nashville, literally right at the middle, halfway, in a freak cold spurt, completely stranded with what was basically, probably in my opinion, should have been a recall from Genuine Scooter Company. If you talk to a lot of people that have any Stella made between 2005 and 2009, they'll talk about the crank issues, the crank bearing issues, which is exactly what I experienced. And then the subsequent air leaks, just all this stuff. And this is kind of reminding me already, just had this rebuilt, and I've already had 2 air leaks up here trying to get all this sealed up and working perfectly. And I give up. There's few times that I say that, but the frustration of this, you buy something and you spend money on it. Money's a very tight resource for me, and it starts messing up right away. And I just remembered, oh yeah. And then I remember that I used to take pictures. I don't even know if I can find any to put in, but every ride that I ride with a buddy that's really into vintage Vespas, a guy I really respect, but every time we ride, he's kind of working on it at one point or another. I used to take pictures every ride and think, I'm going to catalog this, because on a modern Vespa, which my favorite bike, post Stella, I sold my Stella and I got a Vespa S150 and I loved it. It was the best ride, and it was the first bike that I rode back to Nashville on the trace after the Stella stranded me. But I've decided modern was it for me. I love the 150S or S150. And then I bought a GTS 300, absolutely adored, probably should have never sold. But here we are today with my Stella, more frustration. And I've just decided, I've thought, well, I'll get a 72 vintage. There's a guy that has a 72 Sprint that I really like the body design on. But I've thought, you know, I just see them working on their bikes so much. There are things I enjoy wrenching on, like mountain bikes, and there are things that I expect to work. And I want my scooter to work, so this is gonna go, and this is the last footage of it. Should probably put the cowls back on. There we go. Cowls back on the way it should be. The riding in the road configuration. By the way, when I bought this, it had a cool checkerboard fly screen on it, which I broke trying to adjust. I guess it had gotten brittle with age. I just barely touched on it and it cracked. I bought another one, but I'm going to return that and just sell this so that hopefully I can sell this, sell my Rattler and some other stuff, maybe get back into a modern Vespa. But that's my story, kind of an abbreviated version of my experience with this 2008 Stella 2T150. Now 177, but about to be somebody else's problem. Actually, I know the person. My buddy Miles is buying this from me. And look at that. There you go with that spare tire. How cool is that? Engine on the right side, spare tire on the left. Super cool. I just hate that I'm going to have to get rid of this, but these just don't fit my desires, my needs as a person for something that's going to be reliable. I'm going Vespa too, so that I can get, you know, stay within the Vespa heritage, just modern style. So there you go, my Stella. What do you think about my mistake? La Brea, the money tar pit. Comment below, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.